Hey everybody, it's Jane Johnston with the BriarHillGroup at REMAX, Camosun, host of Vancouver Island Time. I'm here with Andrew Plank. Hello, how are you?
Hello, very well. How are you?
I'm excellent. So, what's going on in your world today?
Oh, super stressed, of course. We were just discussing how the timelines are pretty tight here for getting started. I just was on the phone call with my mechanic. I was up in Tofino this weekend, and my car started having some problems, and we had to tow it back to Victoria. He just called me to tell me, Jane, well, you went to do the introductions, that my engine is toast. So.
Awesome.
Yes, so need a new engine in my car, so that's great news. Just adds to everything else going on, but apparently it hopefully is still under warranty. So, yes.
Did you change the oil?
Yes, it's been changed regularly. And it's all fine. It gets lots of good maintenance.
Okay, so what's going on? Let's talk. First of all, we forgot to do the market last week, so let's talk about the market. I'm just going to bring it up.
These numbers surprised me, actually.
How did they surprise you?
Well, at first glance, they look like we've got the same August as we had last year, which I wouldn't have expected considering how busy it has been. But then I thought about the fact that these stats are coming out today for August, and that doesn't reflect the whole month of August. So we still have, just about a week, not quite, but another 5 business days for these stats to build up.
So let me just go over the numbers. The net unconditional sales are 692 because some of the people are listening, not just watching. Last year they were 661 for the month. So year to date we're over probably about 25% already. New listings were at 1,016. This is compared to 1,006 last year. So we're above. This is probably the first time we've been above in a long time. And our active listings are creeping up to 2,713. This is compared to 2,838. And I love these new listings over the market watch over the 7-day period. So we have 322 with 236 pending. So the list to sale ratio is looking pretty good. Mm-hmm. With a price decrease of 90. So that says to me, some people are saying, hey, if you're not sold now, check that price. And then sold means listings that have completed. I expect we're going to see a ton in the next week, especially on September 1st. What do you think?
Sorry, a ton of solds?
Yeah, because I think there's going to be, if sold is when the completion date is. So when they take possession of the house.
Yeah, and they tend to sort of stack up towards the end of the month. So yeah, that number should definitely jump.
Have you been busy?
I've been so busy, just so busy, juggling a lot, especially buyers lately, and some new listings coming on. But it's really difficult to find good property. I mean, I've got buyers who legitimately will buy great, a good, nice property, but there's really limited access to what I would consider a good property at the right price. And when you do find it, you're competing against numerous others for it. So that's the challenge right now. Is the stock is still limited. There's active buyers out there. There seem to be an influx of buyers. Are you finding buyers coming from overseas? And when I say overseas, I mean from Vancouver or Calgary or Ontario?
I'm finding a lot of expats are buying, like Canadians who lived elsewhere are coming back.
Right.
I think because they're seeing the longer picture of what's going to be happening in the market, and what's going to be happening with COVID, where they're living over the next year or so. So they're taking the long view and they're moving here, and they're not going down to the States in the winter, and they're looking to winter here.
Yeah, I'm curious to know how the States financially will weather this versus Canada, and if we're going to see a situation where we had in the past where Canadians with money and equity are buying back into the States again because maybe there's a lot of foreclosures or economic problems down there in the coming times, or if it's going to be the other way around. But I think that we're moving to a point where, cash is king. People with money are going to have some opportunities.
Right.
Yeah.
There's going to be disparity, I think. And I think I was thinking today, I was talking to a friend of mine who's in Western Australia.
Yes.
And she has said there's no COVID there. And anybody who crosses the border there goes into quarantine in a hotel for 2 weeks. And there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. And so they're having events of like 30,000 people, like their economy, Western Australia is fine. So I was thinking maybe we get to the point where we start closing the island. That's what my daughter keeps suggesting.
Yeah. I think the cat's out of the bag, but there's definitely a lot of that. I mean, on social media, everybody was posting plates of American plates when people were coming in, and oftentimes it's somebody actually legitimately lives here and still hasn't switched over their plates. But yeah, there's a lot of fear out there. It's a little bit legitimate, but.
So I've got 2 listings coming up, and both of them I'm going to be signing them virtually. So what I'm doing with them, I've already seen their places. So when I go to see, I'm all masked up. So we're talking about coping with COVID in real estate, by the way. So I'm all masked up. What? Yeah,
today's topic: coping with COVID, and how are we coping, and how are sellers coping and buyers coping? Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
So anyway, I went for a tour of the properties, all masked up, sanitized. I was just commenting today, I haven't had a cold this year because I've been washing my hands diligently for 8 months, 7 months. And then, so we're signing the listing via Zoom. So I'm walking them through the property disclosure, probably going into more detail than I would in person. And then the photographer asks that nobody be around when they do the photos as well. So how are you doing your listings?
Yeah, Zoom often, or at least definitely through online signing sessions, phone calls. Depends on the technology level of the clients. I am meeting some clients in person, especially, and when we're talking technology level, I definitely have clients. I've got one, who does not check email more than once every 6 months on a computer that's probably 10 years old. Anyway, so the point is that, these are meetings in person with this person. So masked up and gloves and, sanitizer and careful, just everything's careful, but it's in some ways, COVID makes things easier if you're doing everything virtually. It also makes it harder if you have to actually, mask up and go and meet everyone and all of that. So sort of there's the 2 channels that it's made some things more difficult, but most things easier from the perspective of streamlining business, but it's not easier in the perspective of managing showings or working with buyers going through homes. And of course, sellers can be nervous about having people in their homes. So those are all the other side of it.
Does your office our office requires a note on the door about COVID and a self-assessment?
Yeah, so I've got that form, and it's laminated, and I just posted on the property. It's also posted in supplements. So any supplements is the Realtor section for anybody who's not sure, the Realtor section for realtors to access the information on the listing. And so I post in supplements, and then with any showing request, it's always, by showing the buyer's agent confirms that they meet these criteria, and their clients do as well. So yes, haven't traveled outside of the country, aren't showing any signs or symptoms, haven't been in contact with anyone who's been tested positive, all of that. Yeah.
Just want to welcome listeners. If you have any comments, you can post them. We'll see them on our line and we can answer them for you. Okay, so what I'm finding, I have not been doing any open houses. I did do virtual ones to start off with, but I found for me they weren't that effective. And I was walking around showing the property with my camera 2 or 3 times. So what I did end up doing was I've done a more in-depth video of the property. And so what that's done is allowed people to see that sorry, somebody's trying to see the property more clearly and explain the property more clearly so that when we get a viewing, it's really warm viewing. So they're viewing the video, looking at the floor plan before they even get in the house.
Mhm.
But I did do an open house on the weekend. And we,
So you did an open house this weekend?
yeah.
Okay. How did that go?
So luckily it was a nice day. So we put in the comments that everybody was expected to mask up and that we would be providing sanitizer. And I stood at the front door, actually sat at the front door on a very lovely porch, and I welcomed people, and I had them go in one at a time, and it worked well. And people were very respectful.
One group at a time, or one at
So
a time?
I had a lineup of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the street.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna do them in condos.
No, that would be really difficult to manage. I had some buyers, we went through an open house, an agent open house. It was just the first morning he'd listed the property, so we did sort of an open setup. So we went through, we were the first ones through, and then of course there was a lineup afterwards. And he did let more than one group in at a time, but it was sort of two groups at a time. He'd originally said he would let one in, and I think that the pile up outside, he just felt like he had to keep it moving. It's hard to host an open house. It's hard to make it work these days. And having that background information, having those warm showings is, I think, the way to go.
Yeah.
I've heard of some virtual open houses where agents sit there, they do maybe a half hour to an hour, but they might have one or two people with eyes on it asking them some questions. And that's really not probably going to be that effective use of time in marketing.
I did do, so for this, we only did an hour as well. So I'm not gonna sit around for 2 hours. And it was in a popular area with people who had been connecting with me. So I was prepared for, it was kind of by invitation, actually. So people who were aware of the listing, and they were all working with realtors. So if there was a problem, I can contact trace them back.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's the other complicating factor. Been here,
Yeah.
reading in the news about people throwing parties, and of course they're not contact tracing anyone and getting shut down, and there's 50 people in a house, and it's ridiculous. But you could use the same argument for having an open house with realtors, and we need to be good at the contact tracing. It's just logistically, it's possible, and I'm sure some of our colleagues are doing this, doing it well. But it is complicated. It complicates matters a lot, and it's a lot. I've always felt that an open house is great as the agent hosting it, because I can watch buyer reaction when I'm inside the house, answer any questions, hear about concerns, and report that back to my seller, make any adjustments we have to. But today that doesn't really work so well.
Yeah.
And ultimately it's best for a buyer to go through a property with their agent, their agent can answer any questions and have that work directly. So if you are hosting an open house, and let's say it's a virtual one, you don't really have the ability to connect with or answer questions. Whereas if they come through with their agent, there's somebody you can contact if there's a change, in price or some other matter. So
well, I find it funny when people come through an open house and they're like, they don't want to tell me who they're working with. And I'm like, if I get an offer tonight and you're interested, I can't get to you to tell you that there's an offer coming in like this. It's really, it's a better position for the buyer to be represented by a realtor, I think. Don't you think?
absolutely. Yeah, and so I don't ask if people have a realtor. I say, who is your realtor at the open house? And then they'll either say, oh, I don't have one, or they'll say so and so. Because the typical agent question is, are you working with a realtor?
Yes.
And they'll often say, yes, but I'm not going to tell you who it is or whatever. or well, they won't necessarily say that, but they might just say yes, and then you don't really get much. Like, I just like that initial question where you kind of, they'd be really impolite if they didn't actually answer the question.
It's an assumptive close. Okay, so yeah.
No, go ahead. We're talking about COVID, so I definitely think we should talk about strategies and working in COVID, and how are you seeing? I'm really seeing a lot of, how is this affecting the market? Do you think? What's going on with, what is going? Why is the market doing what it's doing right now? And how are we dealing with it? There's just so many different moving parts right now, and COVID is the big wild card.
So to me, a lot of people think the market's doing well right now, and so they're trying to get in. There's a sense of urgency to get in before they can, what they consider to be the second wave, if there will be a second wave. I'm talked to people in the field. Some people are wondering about a second wave because people in general are being pretty good.
Our behavior is much different than in the past when there was a traditional second wave. So yeah, it's hard to know. We're kind of in a new era. Yeah.
The other thing is, so the condo market's not doing as well as the housing market. And I think that's because so many people are getting rid of rentals right now.
It'd be interesting to look at, because we just looked at the stats, but it'd be interesting to look at when we're looking at the active listings, the actual current listings on market, what the percentage of those listings are current on market single family versus strata compared to last year, and actually see that difference, because that will, from the stats of last month's, from the real estate board, it was showing that, sales for single family homes are, I think, 60% up over the month before, whereas sales for condos are only up 10% over last year. And that really, I've mentioned that last week, but that really speaks strongly about that market. But what is the actual inventory doing? And I would suspect that, when you look at the actual market and say, well, we have about the same amount of listings on market as we had last year, there might be a real squeeze on single family. It really feels that way.
It does feel that way, especially price-wise.
Yeah. So definitely condos. I feel like people are just tired of looking at. I am personally, like, we just bought a place. I'm personally tired of, being in a 2-bedroom space where we're tripping over each other. My partner's just gone back to work after 3 weeks vacation, but she's been working from home mostly through COVID. She's at the point where she's starting to go back to the office a little bit now that she was just before her vacation, and I know she'll be now. So, I think we're all trying to find a little bit more space, and I think we said this before, but a little bit more, even food security, being able to grow or do something. If you have all this time on your hands, which not everyone does, what are you going to do with it? So people want to.
I find like everybody in our family has sort of found a place to just hang out and defined as their space. So it's made a big difference on where they're, like, how I just changed my settings.
Can you change mine?
So we're not interacting with each other, like in each other's face all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about with buyers? What are you doing with them?
Well, like, it is a struggle because most listings are now requiring no overlap showings. So a really hot listing comes up on market, and you go to make an appointment to view it, and there's really, really limited slots available. And of course, you're trying to schedule your time and your client's time, look at multiple properties at once, hopefully, like, maybe go through 4 or 5 properties at the same time.
So just to be clear, when we usually book a showing, we book, like, I usually book 3 per hour.
Yeah. Because
the assumption is one might sell, and I might have to, like, wiggle around the other, and we might spend more time at one. And so to have the hour, do you do that as well? Do you have, like?
Yeah, I try to stagger them. I'll book I assume about 20 minutes per showing on average, but knowing that sometimes we'll drive right up there and the client will say, you know, let's move on. I usually run through anyway, but we might be 5 minutes at one and 40 minutes in another. But we can on average assume about 20 minutes per showing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to me, it's more difficult to get those slots.
Right. And sometimes what I've done is shown up and I'm watching and I realize that there aren't any other agents there
Yeah.
and they've booked a full hour rather than a half hour or 15-minute slot.
Yeah.
And so they've hooped us.
That's right. Yeah. And so agents traditionally will allow for their listings a 1 hour window. And these days they're actually requiring a 30-minute window instead, which makes it much harder to set up for a raft of showings with your clients, because again, you end up with these holes shot in the middle of your tour and you end up with that. But it does make it easier for the sellers to have the clarity. They're only out for half an hour if they actually have to step out. And especially because, you know, when you are not allowing double bookings, or, you know, everything doesn't sort of hit at once, then the sellers themselves are out all day long, and that's hard on them as well.
So with buyers, are you having them bring their own masks or are you supplying?
I have masks in the car. I have masks, I have gloves, I have sanitizer. I'm borrowing a car right now, because I think I mentioned. So there was a couple of days there where I had to like go and, you know, get from my old car. Anyway, the point is, I generally have everything available for clients. But these days, a lot of people are bringing their own masks. I think everyone's started to get the idea that, you know, it's more cost effective than $1 mask per mask per time to just carry your own mask.
We went to Costco on Sunday, the first time I've been there in a year.
Yeah.
And they were asking everybody to wear masks. They were providing them as they were coming in, but I noticed some people in the store weren't wearing them.
A lot of people were wearing them, did you say?
I would say 99.7% were wearing them, but there were like 2 or 3 people who weren't, which just, I was like, you know,
people to wear them, because they were offering them to people last time I was there, but they weren't actually requiring that you wear one inside. Are they not requiring it?
I thought that's what the sign says, but now I'm not sure.
Well, it could be. I mean, they may have changed their policy. I'm seeing a lot more people wearing masks out again on the streets, where for a while there, after we first reopened, people were just not. So yeah, it's interesting seeing how quickly this shifts and changes.
Yeah. So with buyers, there's some rules. The light's in your eyes again.
No, even with the shades in place, I really can't wait to have my own place.
You sound like my son. He's 18. With buyers, then, are you finding that? So the rule is only the agent touches anything that needs to be opened and closed. This is partially why we're going through this, is just so that sellers get some comfort with what's going on. And
although this is going to cause some discomfort, because I'm going to comment on what you just said. You know, when you meet somebody and they put out their hand to shake your hand and you just automatically reach your hand out and it's like automated, and then you, like, at the last minute you pull back because it's COVID. You know, there's these natural reactions. People have a hard time, and you tell people, okay, I'm wearing gloves, I will touch things. And then you're walking through the home, you're talking this and that, and then the next thing you know, the client has like opened a drawer, not a cupboard or something, and you're like, okay, hold on.
exactly.
So it's you can't control it all.
Right.
And you can create policies and you can do your best. And what are you going to do? You know, remind your client, yes, but you can't yell at them. Don't wait.
Well, I do find usually, like, the spouses, if there are 2 spouses, one will tell the other, honey, stop.
Yeah. So yeah, you can tell them, just don't yell at them.
Are you finding sellers are worried about listing right now?
I think the ones that we're probably not hearing from. Some are worried about listing, but are just dealing with it. They're, spraying everything down. They've thought this through and come up with some procedures. When COVID first hit, I had sellers who wanted to sell a tenanted home, and the tenanted home had a 90-year-old person living in it, and that's a concern. And so it was initially, let's list this for sale and see what happens. And then as more awareness came and more cases came, that we had to stop showings and take the property off market. I think every seller is going to have different concerns, whether it's concerns like it's difficult to sell a tenanted property in COVID. That's a whole other issue. And it's difficult to sell an owner-occupied property in COVID because of the fact that there are strangers coming through these people's homes, and they just don't know how long this is going to be happening and how long they're going to be. You always imagine the worst, I think. If you are leaving your home and have people coming through it, you're going to imagine people's grubby hands on everything and then coughing and sneezing and everything all over your place. So they're going to come home and they're going to sanitize, or they're not. It really depends. But
I have a rental property right now, and I actually got a professional cleaner in to go in between showings just to ensure everything was clean. And we're asking people to do their own laundry. So when they're it's a short-term rental, so they put their stuff in the laundry so that the clean lady doesn't have to touch it, and they put it in the dryer for her. And that just it's I think it's polite, but B, it's safer for everybody if people handle their own linen.
Right. Yeah. So other things, I don't know, we were talking about showings during COVID, and I think tech is interesting that tech is getting, people are doubling down on the virtual tours and the Matterport tours, anything where you can actually physically let your mouse do the walking and walk through the property. If you've ever used one of these, this little,
3D?
Yeah, 3D.
Oh my God, you're such a geek.
I am. But you can use these to look through a home, and it actually feels like you're physically in the home looking around. You can almost feel like you can reach out and touch stuff. And most of the virtual tours that are posted have that tech. So if and a lot of phones, like this is higher tech, but you can get a cheap little $20 headset that your phone goes into, and then you can virtually look through the home as well. So it's great tech, and it's, I think, the way we're moving. The only thing you're missing really is, and I think this is actually an important piece when you walk through a home, is the other senses. Yeah, the sense of smell, especially, if is it clean or is it musty? Is it fresh? What is it? How does it feel to be in that home? And those are things you don't get from the virtual tours.
People buy because they're most people feel the house when they walk in it, and that's the first comment. You hear some sort of response. It's an emotional response to the house. Like you're finding shelter. It's a big deal. Does it feel good? So I find what I'm doing with buyers is I do the virtual tour with my phone, and I talk them through everything just to make sure everything is that they're aware of all the bad things. Also, when I do the virtual tour of the property for the seller, I'm doing the same thing. So I'm being very blunt, and I'm also talking about more than just a house. I'm talking about the area. I'm talking about the neighbors. I'm talking about the access to the stores, and which I think that those 360 tours are missing out on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you don't get, well, and again, speaking about senses, you also don't get the sense of sound when you don't hear the loud industrial site next door or the squeaky floors or anything like that. But, those 360 tours don't give you the neighborhood, but you can get a 360 tour by going to Google and doing the street view and then walking around with the street view. You still can get a lot of information, do some research, the walk scores, get a sense of what the neighborhood's like. before actually physically getting there, and certainly having that conversation, walking, like clients are all about neighborhood, and they don't always. Laurie's just said, I'm so behind on tech, I'm still doing virtual tour showings through FaceTime.
Me too.
Yeah,
I saw
FaceTime's
the house through that last night. Because the buyer's in Portland, she can't come up to Canada. Like she can't willy-nilly. So I think that that's not a bad thing.
You're also working with the technology that your clients have. So it doesn't help to try to come out with some tech that they're not used to or they're not prepared for. Go with the grain of what can actually work based on their own tech and understanding. So yeah.
So do you find, has anything backfired for you working with buyers or sellers and using the technology? So far for me, not.
Yeah, nothing that I can think of that's actually backfired. No. I think the one backfire would be when you do a virtual tour. Those virtual tour cameras are very high resolution, and if your clients haven't actually decluttered visually or taken personal items down, right, you really do get a real intimate sense of the people's homes, and sometimes you can actually see what when the doctor's appointment is on the calendar. These things need to be taken down or hidden, and if you're viewing somebody's home, there's some personal invasion there potential. So people have to really be aware of just how good this tech is. And you're literally seeing into somebody's closet, and sometimes people don't clean up, and especially if there's tenants, there's a bit of a mess, and there's privacy concerns. That would, I think, be the downside of the tech, is just almost how it's this snapshot in time, and once it's done, it's an expensive thing to set up and do. And if there's something that was captured that maybe shouldn't have been, it's really difficult to undo, or can't blur it out, anything like that.
By the way, with tenant properties, we need permission to photograph their stuff. So that backfired on me because I was working with a property manager and she didn't ask. She just said yes. And so we took her word. We asked her formally. She said yes. We took pictures, and then turns out that the property was listed on numerous sites and was syndicated out. And so we had to try and go and retrieve it all back. And it wasn't my fault. It was a real nightmare.
Impossible. Once it's on the internet, virtually impossible to pull these things back. And that is actually, when you're talking about the problems with the tech, when there is an error or a mistake or a misunderstanding, pulling that stuff back is so hard, because you don't actually have access to a lot of these sites. And once you turn it off once it's on the internet, there's a lot of sites that actually archive and keep data, and it's really impossible to pull it all back. So, yeah.
Are you finding that, oh my God, like everybody and their aunt is calling me right now. Are you finding that, have you had any people regret purchasing a place virtually? Because I've sold maybe 3 or 4 houses this year where the buyer actually hasn't seen the house, but it's all worked out well on my end.
I've actually had that happen pre-COVID, where people have bought virtually. I haven't actually had any virtual purchases during COVID. Certainly, trying to get people as much information as possible, but no actual purchase. And in those ones pre-COVID, they were happy with their purchase. But no, not during COVID. Yeah.
Awesome. And so buyers, preparing them as well. Any pushback on wearing the mask during showings?
I've not had anyone who said, no, I won't wear a mask. I know that there are people out there who are, I guess, COVID deniers, or just don't feel like they're personally at risk. But I haven't had that, luckily. I think that if there was to be that, we'd probably have to have a discussion and maybe decide not to work together, because whatever my personal beliefs are, or their personal beliefs are, we have a requirement to meet the protocols, and we're being allowed into someone's home. We need to actually fulfill those obligations. So that's,
yeah.
Luckily I haven't had that happen yet, but Yeah.
I've always said that it's a privilege, people
Yeah.
come in and they want to take pictures of people's houses, and I'm like, no, this is somebody else's. Like this, you're really overstepping the boundaries. We've done great marketing here, provided pictures for you already, and you can download those.
Interesting. Interesting. I don't know if I'm on the same page or on that one, and I'd be interesting to hear from sellers on this, but I feel like, I mean, if someone's taking general video or photo within a home that's already been marketed and videoed and virtual toured, and somebody's saying, can I take a quick like photo for reference, or can I do this? They want to take a photo of a specific element. If it doesn't feel to me like it's invasive, I will allow it. I know I see you raising your eyebrows, so it's an interesting debate.
I just think ethically, I would have a trouble if somebody took a picture of something in my house that I didn't give permission to.
Okay.
I think you
Yeah.
just have to look at it on your own, from your own perspective. Okay, so anything else you want to talk about with regard to this?
Well, I mean, just marketing, all that stuff in COVID. I mean, personally, COVID has made things. There's a lot more churn. It's a lot busier, which is interesting. I would have thought we would have been slow. Our summertime, which is typically our slow time in real estate, because we didn't have the busy time in spring, it's just been so busy. So plans that were made anticipating in summer are now, it's really difficult. As I said, I was away in Tofino, my car broke down, but it was hard for me to get away. That was 3 days away that I really couldn't afford to take away because I've been so busy. And yet that time was already kind of set and planned for. So I found that's been interesting, is just juggling personal life at this time and work, really trying to commit to, getting as much done as possible for clients and just making it happen. And it's hard.
What I've found hard is that this is the first summer that I haven't been away in 16 years. And so people are like, well, I'm coming on the 24th. And I'm like, I'll be here.
Yeah, I will be here. Yeah. And I have a lot of people coming from out of town, as I said, and that's not typical usually of this time of year, where they're like, I'm coming, I want to buy something, or I'm moving here, I want to buy something, let's go. So I'm really trying to free my calendar and stay as free as possible, because as real estate agents, we do have to make hay when the sun shines. And we all know that around the next corner of the next season, things could be very drastically different. So we've got to be thankful for what we have and work with what we got.
Yeah.
One thing I found with COVID is, since COVID, you can't see this, but I can't do it my button anymore. And I'm trying to get back into shape. I mean, oh, hey, thanks. No, I'm not going to do it. But yeah, there's
flouncy shirts.
Yeah, I mean, everything's just, there's a new normal. That's all. We haven't figured out what it is yet, but it's the new normal. I don't think we're ever going back to the way things were. We're going to see a lot more masks and a lot more awareness of sanitation, and just hope that we can keep everyone healthy and safe.
Yeah.
But people will always need homes, and so we're just doing our best to keep that happening. Yeah.
So you're going to be away next week. How long are you away for?
3 days. I'm going to be camping for 3 days out at French Beach. So I'm going to have to get somebody to cover my business. I may have to actually make it 2 days instead of 3. I had planned 3, but we'll see what happens. I've got a lot on the go right now with transactions and buyers, and everybody's really, really active right now. So I'm going to have to really think this one through. I'd really like to get away though, and this is something that's been planned for a while.
Well, I'll be here. It's actually my mom's birthday.
Happy birthday to your mom. Your mom passed away.
Yeah. But anyway, I'll be here, and we're going to have a different guest next week. It'll be Jen Lowe, because Andrew will be away, the bum. And so Jen Lowe's, she's a local mortgage broker. She's going to be talking about what's happening on her end. She tells me things are really, really busy as well. And everyone's using the term make hay while the sun shines, because in Victoria it is really beautiful right now. We've had an almost perfect summer, I think, in terms of weather, with just a few days of rain, and people are out and about. So anything you want to leave with saying?
No.
Wait till September 2nd if you want to work with Andrew.
Thanks, everybody. Not a lot of comments this time.
Pardon?
Not as many comments this time.
Not as many comments in time this time. Okay, so if people want to reach you, here's how they do so. Andrew Plank. Want to read it?
Andrew Plank.
Andrew
Give me
Plank.
a call. Go to my website.
And your number for those who are listening.
For those who are listening, thank you. It's, talking about tech, here we go, right? So 250-360-6106 is my phone number, call or text. And you can check out my website, andrewplank.com. Go to the bio section, and you'll find out a little more about myself. Thanks,
Okay.
Jane.
I'm Jane Johnston with the BriarHillGroup at REMAX Camosun. You can reach me at 250-744-0775. My email is briarhillgroup@gmail.com, and you will get me. And you can go to my website as well at vancouverislandtime.com to check out neighborhoods and see how people are living throughout the city. Okay, so we'll see you in 2 weeks. We'll see Jen Lowe in 1 week at 10 a.m. on Mondays, right?
Yes.
Okay, have an awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye.